Welcome to the Dr. Diane Show, where we explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. With over 20 years of expertise as a mindset warrior, perspective shifter, and unshakable optimist, I am dedicated to helping you reach your wildest dreams in business, health, performance, and relationships. Learn about the power of thought and how it shapes your life to take risks, change careers, find love, go on adventures, and live passionately with me, Dr. Diane. Get ready for revolutionary ways of thinking, being, and creating an amazing life. The Dr. Diane Show starts now. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Diane Hayden, and you are listening to the Dr. Diane Show on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, where we will explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul. Each time on the Dr. Diane Show, we will have experts from around the country discussing cutting-edge topics on longevity medicine, natural health, mindset, and soul purpose to help you shift your perspective and become a mindset warrior like me. I'm excited today to have with me Andrea Anderson. She is a health and emotional wellness family manager, coach, conscious parenting consultant, and author for parents with kids and teens whose brains are wired differently. Andrea helps parents parent better, so they connect more deeply with their kids, create more peace in their family, and begin to help their kids to thrive. So welcome, Andrea. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you, Diane, for having me. It feels great to be here.
Awesome. So I love to start these talks by basically giving our listeners a little bit more background on you, because people are always curious, like, how did people get into this, like this area or realm of whatever, of what they do. And then I also know that people are going to be, the question they're going to have is, what does she mean by kids' brains are wired differently? So let's start with, like, how did you get into this? Did you have like a journey of your own, I'm assuming? And
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what happened. I have two sons. One is 20 and one is 23 now. But when they were younger, young, I sensed something was a little bit askew. And not that they were wrong or bad, but there were some behaviors, there were some things that they would do that I had a really hard time with. And eventually it came to light that they did have what somebody might refer to as various neurodiversities. So it was things like different behaviors at school, sometimes getting in trouble for not sitting still or paying attention. Sometimes it was a matter of being defiant at school, also defiant at home at times. There was anxiety, definitely anxiety. There were different things, felt like a ball of different things that would surface. And for the longest time, I felt like it was me. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I wasn't parenting in the best way, so this was contributing. But then at some point, I realized, no, it feels like there's more going on. So as I said, what came to light was that they were basically sharing symptoms that were part of a neurodiversity. So once I figured that out, I started to do different things to try to help them as much as possible to step further into who they really were. I felt like these behaviors, these things that they were doing weren't really actually who they were. It was somehow a reaction to something that was going on for them internally. So the more I was able to help them, I felt like the more they could step further into who they actually really were, that internal potential that we all have. So I worked with different holistic doctors. I worked with mainstream doctors. I worked and got involved in different holistic modalities. I wasn't really holistic minded before I had my sons, maybe teeny bits, but not the way I started to immerse myself. It felt like it was, I don't want to call it an emergency, but I was at high level urgency. Let me do whatever the F I can do to make sure my boys get better, was like the motivator. So I tried all sorts of different things. I got involved in helping them. I shifted their diets. So the food that was going into them was much more nutritious, helped them feel a little more settled. Then I started to learn about different foods that actually exacerbated some of the symptoms that they were living and sharing with us as a family and at school. I just kept learning, oh, well, these foods help them. Oh, these foods don't help them. Okay. This approach and this modality with this doctor's helping. Oh, this movement strategy is helping them. All these different things. And it wasn't so much that I wanted them to just be able to do a thing and be better. That would have been great, but it was more, I sensed and knew that I had to keep moving through maybe helping to rewire their brain in a different way and clear them of whatever was in the way that inhibited them from being their best. So basically, after years of doing this, well, actually earlier on, it was just a few years of doing this, I then went back to holistic nutrition school and learned so much more about nutrition. Holistic nutrition, meaning when I eat this food, what is it actually, how does it have me feel? Not just do I lose weight, do I have more energy, but how am I emotionally? How are my sons really? They were like, I don't want to call them my guinea pigs, but they were. I got to see firsthand. You give them this, they do this. You give them that, they do that. Just and so as I learned and put these pieces together, I started to have a huge framework of, wow, these things work, these things these things not so much. And I got to watch my boys as they started to improve. They started to have an easier time at school. They started to be able to express to me what was going on in a calmer way. They were able to sometimes shift their anxiety and settle, and sometimes go all the way in, but then catch themselves afterwards. And as they started to get better, the interesting thing was I was more worn out and I felt worse. I felt crappier. And so I realized, even though they were getting better, I was still running around trying to do 20 things, 50 things in a day to try to help them and then take care of the other things that were happening in my life. And so I would show up, I'd be short with them, I'd snap at them, I'd yell at them sometimes. I would then walk away feeling so guilty, like I just did the worst thing in the world. And then that guilt and the whole way I handled things would weigh on me. And I realized, oh my gosh, my sons aren't here so that I can help them step into their potential. They're actually here for me to start to help myself feel better and step into my potential. So it wasn't just how can I help my sons? It became what do I need to do so I can parent better, so I can feel better within myself. Quite honestly, I felt like the deeper calling that this had me all meet was the fact that I had two sons that I felt like weren't meeting the outside world's criteria of being their best, and the way the boxes present themselves as you should do this, you should do that, you should be this way, you should be that way. We weren't fitting into any of those freaking boxes, them or myself. And I thought, I know why this is here, because I haven't felt good enough. My whole life, I haven't really underneath it all. I covered it up in many ways, but I was like, I didn't feel good enough. So I got to have two boys who helped bring me double the goodness so I could start to learn how to feel better about myself, how to feel better about them, and stop caring so much about what everybody else thought. So there were a lot of components. And I basically ended up taking these components and eventually turning it into, especially after going to holistic nutrition school, I turned it into a program for people. And I worked and helped people in other capacities for a while. And then eventually it came to me that I really needed to help moms who had kids who had different things going on, help them to help their kids. And then eventually it became, let's not just help the kids, let's help you so you can show up, parent in a way where you feel better, where you feel good about yourself. But here's the real thing, so that you guys can connect more deeply, so that you can have more peace in your family, so that you can not only feel good about yourself, but your kids can start to feel good about themselves. And so these kids are set up more to thrive from this way of supporting them versus let's just fix them. So you're okay, I'm okay, and life is good. That's a great way, but now we need to do a little more beyond that. Make sense?
Yeah. I love the whole spiritual, like
Yeah.
slash self-awareness, self-development aspect of it that you learned, right, from this.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like, I don't know that every person would have it would have clicked that way for them.
Mhm. Yeah. This is where I was meant to go. This is what I was meant to do, whether I wanted to do it or not. Right. It was,
Yeah.
I feel like what happens for us is we keep getting situations, experiences in our life to remind us that we are enough. Right. And we can keep denying them and look at it differently, or we can go in and meet it. But we will keep getting the situations till we go there and pay attention. And so, and I can't sit here or stand over there or do anything and tell you, oh, that never arises for me anymore. That's BS. It still comes up. But I have tools now. I know what to do to meet it and then to move through the self-doubt and remember that it's okay. I'm okay. They're okay. Right? So to accept what is and then go beyond and know, okay, I've got this.
Yeah, I love it. Without getting into too much of the, I guess, neurophysiology, when you say, the kids whose brains are wired differently,
Yeah.
and there was another term that you used that I think might need some explanation. Was it neurodiversity?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
just explain those two.
right. Right. So they're one and the same for me.
Okay.
When I refer to somebody whose brain is wired differently, what comes to mind for me is somebody who might experience anxiety, maybe a more heightened level of anxiety. Somebody who, this could be adults or kids, by the way, somebody who experiences depression or ADHD, symptoms of ADHD or ADD, or has a harder time getting motivated or has a lack of belief in themselves. These honestly are things that we all experience. And then there's some people who tend to experience them at an even more heightened level. So it's almost like imagining there's certain pathways in their brain that are firing differently than someone who can experience those same things and has those experiences, moves through them, and they're not so inhibiting, right? So, so I refer to it as brain wired differently, also because sometimes using a label like neurodiversities, which I'll get into in a moment, or ADD or ADHD or OCD or whatever, those can feel so much more permanent and like a locked in situation. But when it's just the brain's wired differently, all we need to do is just think about using tools to sort of start to repattern our brain in a way where we can be calm, where we can do these other things. It's possible versus it feels practically like a stuck thing that's impossible and not probable to move through. So, and neurodiversity, I put in the same camp. It's just a blanket label for all the things I just mentioned. One and the same as brain wired differently. Yeah.
So, do you feel like not labeling is more for the parent or the children or both? Because there's so
Well,
many people that will just say like, yeah, my kid has autism
yeah.
or my kid has ADHD or whatever.
Right, right. And I did that for a long time too. It feels so there's no right or wrong way. For me, it feels more pliable to not have that label. Feels like there's room for movement. Whenever there's words that feel heavier to us and we use them, there's like a stuckness to it. Feels like this is that person. They are that. They don't just have that. They have that and it's like attached to them versus they have these symptoms and we're going to work on these symptoms and these symptoms can improve. Right. So it just feels lighter. So there's going to be some people who say, um, my kid has ADHD, my kid has ADD. And for them, maybe it's not an issue. Maybe there's no attachment to it. Chances are, though, if they look more closely, there probably is something underneath that makes it feel like that is a thing that just is, and it's not necessarily movable, bendable, or shiftable. So for me, this is how I go. There's no right or wrong. I like this. It feels much better. I did used to use the labels all the time. I didn't know otherwise until I realized this doesn't feel good to me. So I would like to shift into a new way. And my way was let's just make this lighter and have it be about a brain that's wired differently.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
Right. And not to mention the fact I think also like when you take the label off, it feels like there's possibility. There's like, optimism or whatever that this could be
right.
healed or, there could be a better situation. So I love the way that you do that for sure. So we are going to go to a quick break. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. When we come back, we'll be exploring more with Andrea Anderson. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. But before we continue, I want to make sure everyone knows how to contact me. You can find me at www.drdianehayden.com or at either of my two publications, www.naturalnutmeg.com and www.essentialnaples.com. And you can learn more about Andrea Anderson at www.andreachapmananderson.com. That's spelled Andrea CHAPMANANDERSON.com. So when we were right before we went to break, we were just talking a little bit about just what it means in terms of how kids' brains are wired differently, and then I was saying how I just love that you remove the label of saying, oh, my kid has autism or ADHD or whatever, because I feel like we do get very caught up in a diagnosis, and
Mhm.
then sometimes that doesn't allow us to think past that. Like, a lot of times these diagnoses can be reversed.
Mhm.
So why are we, and with any disease really, like why are we getting so attached to labeling something when, who knows, a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, you might not have that diagnosis anymore.
Right,
And
right.
and what does it mean if we continue to say it over and over to ourselves? Like, what are
Yes.
we saying to our brain and all of that?
Exactly. You got
Yeah,
it right there in a nutshell, without a doubt. What are we
yeah,
saying to our brain over and over? I am this. I am this. Inadvertently, we're doing it, right?
right,
So, how about shift out of a label and just leave enough space for some other possibilities? Like you said, more potential.
right. Yeah. So I'm sure our listeners are dying to hear, what are the tools and strategies that you use to help
Yeah,
parents just connect more deeply and kind of create more peace in the family?
yeah, absolutely. So, there are several, but I chunked it down into three main categories. Um, and the first category is actually food. So I mentioned before, I went back to holistic nutrition school to learn more about food. And I learned it also through experimenting with my family, with myself. And what I have found is there are specific foods that will help you to feel calmer. There are specific foods that settle your nervous system more so. And I like to think of food as a foundation for feeling calmer. You can feel, you know, calm or fine. I wanted to say comfortable, content without shifting your food. But I'll tell you what, when you start to shift your food, you'll notice it tends to be a lot easier to reach for other emotions when, you know, the SHIT hits the fan. Like when something happens in your family or in your life and you're like, you actually, if you don't catch yourself right away, you can start to. And then you can rein yourself back in and you can settle yourself, sincerely settle yourself. Not like I'm holding this in and I want to yell at my kid or I want to freaking scream and run out of it. Whatever, like whatever it is, you start to not feel that as often. I'm not telling you it all goes away. We still have other things to heal within us, but it makes a significant difference. And
It
so,
really is amazing how much food affects your mood, anxiety. I mean, I don't think
yeah,
most people even realize, and there's a whole field of study now on,
yeah,
the gut brain interaction and all of that, but there's a ton of research out there now to show that food has such a significant effect on your
yeah,
mood and anxiety, and of course the way that your brain works. And not,
exactly.
not just you as the parent, but the child as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so, especially when we start to focus on us and we decide, okay, I want to show up differently. I want to feel better with how I parent. I don't want to walk around feeling guilty because I did XYZ or said XYZ. No, I want to feel good. I want to feel in alignment with my heart and soul as I parent. And so food makes a difference. So it's a matter of, I can give you two examples, one with my son, speaking in terms of kids, and then also with myself. I have plenty too. But when one of my sons was younger and I had just shifted my kids' food, and one of the things I did was I took the gluten out. That was something that I learned can actually exacerbate emotions and make some people feel anxious more easily or angry or frustrated more easily. So I shifted the food out just to see what would happen in hopes I'd get some good, see a nice difference later on. But so my sons had both been gluten free for a few months at least. We were having company over. I still made sure that I always tended to the company because
Has
that's
some gluten for the for the
I had some
visitors.
gluten for the company, right? And so I had a pasta dish with the gluten, and I had pasta without the gluten, right? So my son was maybe around 3.5, maybe 4-ish around this time, and I had a big bowl of pasta, and I still needed to like put things into it. And he saw the pasta, and he reached up on the counter and stuck his hand in the pasta, and he put a little bit in his mouth. as soon as he put a little bit in his mouth, it was almost like gluten radar went off because he hadn't had it a few months. He was like grabbing gobs of it and shoving it in his mouth. And he just, oh my God. And I'm acting like it's like something horrible. I'm like, oh my God, don't eat that pasta. So, which is where I was at that point in time, right? Like so nervous. I need to make sure I do this just right. But that's a whole nother story. So anyhow, so he eats the pasta. Everything's was fine the next day. I'm like, interesting. 3 days later, he had a delayed reaction, right? Because when we have a food sensitivity, it can take up to 21 days before we actually feel a response to something. So it's hard. It's not like a full-blown allergy. It's a sensitivity. So it's basically a different um, it's basically a different antibody in our body that is showing us we have a delayed, excuse me, that we have a food sensitivity. Anyhow, so he 3 days later has a big fit over something very little. And it felt like he couldn't manage himself. I could see this. And it felt like I couldn't manage him. And it just kept rolling for, it felt like hours. I'm sure it wasn't. But and I was like, I think this might be the gluten. And then I purposely experimented again a few weeks later and I got the same reaction. It was also delayed. So I said, okay, so I do see this does impact him. I'm clear on this now. So that's just a food that exacerbated his symptoms, that exacerbated his anxiety, his sense of frustration. It just surfaced more easily when that food was in his system. I have also, I'll do the same food, have had gluten. And after not having it for a while, and I have noticed it's a lot easier for me to get snippy with the family. It's a lot easier for me to feel overwhelmed when I'm doing things. So, and then I have the flip side of that. When I was in nutrition school, one of the things we needed to do was actually experiment with food. So it wasn't just learn about food, and it was a matter of eat this food and eat it for 2 to 3 weeks and see how you feel. What does it do for you, for your physiology and also for your emotions? And so I started to eat, this was many years ago before kale was a thing. So I started to eat kale and I had it for, the idea was to eat dark leafy greens. I went with the kale and I had it for just about 3 weeks straight. Before the 3 weeks had expired, I noticed I was in my kitchen and I would make, when I was cooking, I wanted the music on and I was dancing around the kitchen. I was dancing around the living room. And then I'd be bringing my kids to their therapy appointments and all the things we needed to do. And I'm listening to music. I'm feeling so good. And I'm dancing as we get out of the car. And everything felt light. Even the harder things felt light. Not everything. Many things felt light. I felt really good. I felt like I was in control of my life and I felt alive. It wasn't just, and all that was making sure I had greens in me like 5 days a week for almost 3 weeks. It sounds like a lot, but it was so worth it. And it was like, it didn't even register until I was like, oh my God, I am dancing a lot. I feel really good. I'm really happy with everybody. So, I mean, there's the foods that exacerbate us, and there's literally the foods that lifted us. And that's what I experienced in both of those arenas. And so for sure, I help people see what foods are going to help them to show up in a way where they feel really good for themselves, with themselves, and also because they're calmer, they have a broader range of emotions that they can choose from to parent their kids. Now they connect with their kids more easily and they have more peace in their family.
Do you find that do you actually have people do their own sort of experiment with these different foods, or do you have lists or whatever you want to call it that you advise on, like these are foods I would avoid and these are foods that are probably going to be okay?
Yeah. So I do both. So, and it's also a matter of what somebody's open to. I'm going to advise them on the foods. I'm going to let them know what foods are going to help them, help their emotions so that they feel calmer, more relaxed, less prone to anxiety. And then those foods that really lift you up and help put you in a lighter energy. And then I'm also going to let them know what foods tend to exacerbate people's feelings of anxiety, of stress, of worry, of angst, of anger. I'm going to let them know both. Um, and it's not like I just give a list. I can give a list, but I also, they learn about the foods as we go along. And I ask them to experiment with the foods as we go along so that they can also see, how did I feel after 2 weeks of this? How did I feel after 2 weeks of this other food? they'll get to see and experience for themselves. It won't just be information they take in that they have to try to get their brain to believe and wrap their arms around. So, and then the other thing is if they are having issues, we look at, let's take that food out. I'm thinking, and as I listen to what they're eating, what if you take this and this out and let's see how you are without those foods for a bit. So there's a combination of things, experimenting and providing information, education, and a list around that.
Yeah, because you'd be surprised. I mean, you wouldn't, but I think maybe our listeners would be surprised at how personalized it really is. And when you
Mhm.
think about things, like I guess we could take a few of the big ones, like, probably most people shouldn't be eating gluten, sugar, of course, avoid that, the processed foods. Like these are all the no-brainer things.
Mhm.
But there's foods that I think we think are healthy, and maybe they are for some people.
Mhm.
But when you really look at like how does it affect me individually, like for
Yeah.
example, some people have no problem with, like, let's say, like certain types of rice you might think are fine or healthy, or even certain types of vegetables, or eggs is a good one,
Yep.
right? Like most people probably think like, oh, those are all healthy foods, they should
Yeah.
be no problem. But if you actually like took a food sensitivity test, or
Mhm.
even like a glucose meter, and you'll find that some people, certain foods raise their blood sugar more than other people's,
For sure.
and we don't know why, just genetics, right? Like, so I think it's
Yeah.
good to actually get it really individualized.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You are honing in on something that is important. There are generalities that tend to work for most people. And then I do help clients go into the specifics for their bodies to start to really get clear. These foods tend to work for most people, but these three maybe not for me. And these other ones I didn't realize work really well for me. So they get to really know more about their bodies and what works and what doesn't in terms of these foods. Um, and then food is huge. As I said, it's a foundational piece, but then there's other things. The whole goal is to help parents to feel calmer, be more at peace, so that they can connect more deeply and basically have more peace in their family, like I was saying before. So the goal is food. Let's start there, but then let's also add in other tools so that they know that they can reach for these other tools when the food isn't enough. Because the food is just a part of the pie and it's a nice sizable piece of the pie, but it's not the only piece of that pie. There's other things like mindset tools that we can use to help calm ourselves down. Um, and I know we probably only have a period of time I can talk right now. So I'll just share a little bit and then I can share more after the break. But the next tool is a conscious parenting mindset tool that I use. And really, even if you're not a parent, it's just a mindset tool. And it's about noticing when you feel angry, when you feel hurt, when you feel sad, when you have feelings where you feel triggered by something, it's really, really important to pay attention to those feelings. You don't want to bypass them because they actually don't go away. You can keep looping if you allow in your brain, like you're thinking it on the same subject, worry, 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 stress, 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 anger, 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 whatever it is, right? You'll loop on it until you pay attention to it. And so, what I mean by that is you want to take the time to sit down and actually feel that feeling instead of let it loop through your brain. Because us humans, if something bothers us and we're triggered by something, we can loop for a few hours, for a few minutes, for a day, for 2 days, some people for months and years. So it's really important to notice that what's happening is I have something that bothered me and I keep returning to it and I keep returning to it and it keeps reigniting that feeling within me. So, how are you going to show up with your family, with your spouse, with your partner, with anybody else, and actually be able to feel good and connect with them and have things go well? You're actually not. You're checked out and you're stuck in the loop, right? So, what we want to do is we want to honor that feeling. And honoring that feeling means stopping and relaxing. And what I actually do, I'll give you, should I wait and just tell you next or go
No,
for it
go
now?
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So I have a room in my house that I go to. It could be your bathroom, it could be your car. And I go and I sit down and I will say, okay, I am feeling feelings that I'll think of the situation that bothered me. And then I'll say, I'm feeling feelings that I associate with. It's like fear, sadness, hurt, whatever. Those are ones that I have looped through many times. And I'll just say that. And then I will breathe. I'll just take a few breaths and I will then notice what's going on inside my body
I
as
love it.
I just get real with the fact of this is what I'm actually feeling. I feel hurt. I feel sad. I feel heavy. And so now I start to feel, oh, my heart, it hurts a little bit over to the left. So there's like a pain in there. Oh, my neck feels a little tight. My throat, it feels like there's a knot there. Oh, actually, I feel a little tight between my shoulders. Like I'll just start to go through and notice what's going on in my body and just call it out. Just keep calling it out. And then when I feel like I'm a little bit more settled, then I will, oops, I have something popping up on my screen. Then when I feel a little bit more settled, I will then just ask it what it wants me to know. Okay. And I'll just hear a thought will come. And this happens. I don't have a special ability. We all have this ability. You just ask, and a thought that the first thought that comes to you is the thought of what you're meant to know about that situation. It might be that, it might be something as simple as this is better than you think. This is hurting because of XYZ. You start to get information that helps you to then make a choice. And that choice is to do something differently. It helps you to pivot out of the loop. It gives you the idea, the thoughts, a new idea to shift it to something different. And I need to post something that popped up on my screen. Can you still see me? I
Yeah,
apologize.
yeah, yeah. No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
I love that because I think what you're doing basically and what you need to do to get out of the spiral of thinking is you need to shift your focus to something else. Like there's so many tools when you study like, mindset about or meditation or whatever it might be, or just ways to stop the negative thinking and that whole feedback loop that you're talking about. Like some things that I'll do is like I'll just get up and exercise, or I'll go for a walk, or I'll get myself out of the like the setting that I'm in, or whatever that might be. But
Right.
basically what you're doing is you're instead of just sitting here and ruminating on it, and the thoughts keep coming, keep coming, keep coming, you're putting yourself in another space,
Yeah.
and you're allowing your brain to actually refocus on something else
Right.
by starting now to it's meditative in a sense, not like
Yeah.
traditional meditation, but what you're doing is you're asking your brain to now focus on, okay, what are the parts of my body where I'm feeling sensations,
Right.
and what are these sensations?
Right. Yeah, and I agree. It is a shift from what you were thinking before to something else, which already allows you to settle. Start to settle your nervous system. It starts to settle your thinking, right? So, but there's something else that's happening, and that is the fact that the thoughts and the feelings want to be felt. Because I also have tools where we get up and we go do something else, and we jump on a mini rebounder, or we do this, or we do that, or we go for a walk, just like you said. But the feelings still need to be felt. So, because for years, I would shift my energy by doing something else, exactly as you said. Like, I leave the room, I go outside, I breathe in the fresh air, I'm in nature, I feel better. And those are fantastic and they make a difference. But if I still don't go in and feel those feelings, it's like an emotional, it's like think of your computer. You have a lot of tabs open, right? And think of all these tabs when there's a lot of tabs open, our computer can be a little slower, not work to the same capacity, right? Or really not work well. Same thing. It's like an emotional tab that we open up each time we have something that bothers us, something that stresses us, something that hurts us, some little mini trauma, if you will. Sounds a little exaggerated, but it can be considered that. So a little emotional tab opens up. If we don't go in and feel those feelings, the tab remains open. We can go off and go for a walk. We'll start to feel better, and that's great. But it will be easier to go back to that loop because there was no feeling it, honoring it, which creates a closed tab, right?
Right.
Less taxing
Yep.
on the body. So there's that. And what you said, then as you do something else that lifts you up even further that you like doing, could be dancing, could be going for a ride in the car, listening to music, could be that walk in nature. Nature's freaking fantastic, as we know, for shifting us into a better space, right? Lifting our vibration, lifting our energy, and helping us show up in a way that's more aligned with who we actually really are. So, so I agree with that. But and there's something else you can do after this little process that I talked about to help calm yourself down. and just clear things, um, basically, you can then go in and I have this exercise where I ask myself, how is it okay? Meaning the thing that bothered me, I don't have to like it. I don't have to condone it. But the truth is, it's okay. I function under the premise there that everything's okay. That there's actually all the things we don't like that are going on out in the world are actually we don't like them, but it's really the story that we attach to it that makes it not okay, not the facts and the situation of what it is, right?
It's the meaning we give it. It's the meaning we
Exactly.
give it.
We
Yeah.
infuse that story, which has a meaning to it, which then makes us react happy or sad, angry or whatever, right? So if it's all neutral and we're attaching stories to it, it's a matter of let's find where this is actually okay and how this is okay. So I have found myself, I'm in the kitchen, I spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I'm in the bathroom, I'm in whatever room, and I'm talking to myself, how is this okay? How is this okay? I'm looking, and I'll say the answers out loud. How's this okay that my kid did this? Well, my brain wants to tell me first it's not okay. Then I keep going and looking and I keep saying it out loud till I find something and I can feel it. It brings me a little bit of relief. I
Mhm.
feel a little more settled. I because I've connected to the truth that this is actually not such a problem the way my brain was making it a problem. So between honoring your feelings, eating food that supports you to be able to have to feel a little more settled or a lot more settled, and then also basically looking for how this is okay, how you can accept the situation that felt like it was a non-accepting situation. You start to shift yourself. You start to repattern. You create new pathways in your brain that allow you to start to think differently about a situation that was always an issue or often an issue for you before. So it's a matter of through repetition, our parents, the adults in our life, trained us to think a certain way, react a certain way, have certain behaviors through repetition. They didn't always realize what they were saying or teaching us, but we took it on and through repetition, basically started to be that what we kept hearing. Do this, don't do that, all that. Now, all we're doing is through these habits, bringing in food that helps support you better, bringing and settle you more, bringing in honoring your feelings, and just paying attention to what's going on, closing those emotional tabs. Then doing things like learning to say to yourself regularly on the daily, how is this okay? Each time something bothers you, and really finding something. Sometimes it takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, but you can do it while you do other things and really finding an internal shift. Even just a little bit of relief helps you know there is truth here. This isn't as bad as I thought. Now we show up differently. Now we start to repattern that brain, as I was saying, to help us when something goes wrong. We actually, our brain will start to look for how it's okay instead of immediately go to default mode negativity. No, it's not okay. You're like, no, 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 wait, this is okay. I can do this. What's going on here? How can I see this? This is when we can look at our kids and go, instead of being like, you did this happen, it's more like, what's going on for them? There's something happening here. And I want to understand this from their point of view. Let's see what we can do. What we're in, it just changes the dynamics with your family, but with yourself, with your partner. And then there's other tools. And as we start to bring in other tools, we don't have to do them all. Go with one or two that feel good. Go with that for a while. Start to feel better, start to see the improvements in your life, and then start to bring in some of these other tools. And I have more. Let me tell you, I have plenty of them. I've been at this for years.
That's
When you
awesome though.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think it really is it's so simple, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like a lot I do the same thing in a different way. Maybe like I think about it from the perspective of someone else. Like, okay, like so something happened that I didn't like or whatever. It's a trigger or I have an emotional response to. Well, how would a more compassionate person react to this? Or how would
Mhm.
a worse off person react to this? Or how would a historical figure react to this?
Yeah.
And just try to look at it from some different perspective.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it's like, oh wow, this really isn't a big deal at all. Like, like
Exactly.
I'm
I don't
complaining about something that, like, well, here's an example. Like, I'm complaining about, so my mother said something that bugged me or whatever, triggered me. She's
mhm.
90 years old. I could look at it from the perspective like, someone who lost their mom would be like so grateful to have a situation where your mother is pissing you off
Right, right,
because
right.
she's
Yeah,
still there, right? So
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
like think just putting yourself in different perspectives. I think though that for everybody, some people more than others, for whatever reason, the way that we're all wired, it's almost like we want to hang on to these negative emotions. It's like
Mhm.
hard to let it go, to be
Yes.
like, how is this okay? It's like, no, it's
Right.
not okay.
That's
Right?
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. And that's what most people meet with when they first start doing that. How's it okay? I've done this for a long time and I still will do that sometimes. And that's when I know, ooh, this one is really important for me to go in and pay attention to because I am clinging to it not being okay.
Exactly.
Right? Like the more we cling and the more we are adamant and it's not okay, it's actually okay. And it becomes our work. It's really important to set that intention to see it differently because now you're going to feel differently. Now you're going to be in a different energy. So now you're going to even attract differently because you're in that higher vibration, that higher energy. And so interacting with your kids, your partner, your spouse, your parents, or whomever, it's going to be different because you are showing up differently. And of course, all the other cool things we get to attract into our life as a result of feeling more settled in that piece as well. That's just the bonus, right? So, but it's true. And so when you see yourself stuck and not wanting to do it, that's when I remind myself it's important sometimes to be emotionally uncomfortable, to push myself where I wouldn't want to push myself, to go in there because that's where I'm going to get the goods. Like that's going to have a bigger impact on me than the easy ones because I already been there. I already know I can get in there and make a difference, right? Oh yeah, this. So yeah, go there. Let that be your signal. Go, go, go. Green light, go. Instead of red light, out of here.
Yeah. I think also people have a hard time comprehending like how is it that if I change that's going to make that person change, right? Like
Yes. Yeah.
but it's it's like that Michael Jackson song, right? Like
Which one?
you're in the mirror, like
Oh yeah,
basically
yeah, yeah,
you've got to be the one to make the change and then
yeah,
other
yeah.
people will reflect
Right.
that back to you. And all
Yeah.
I can say, like my advice on this, all I can say is that when you finally try it and you actually see it being mirrored back to you, then you will realize how this is possible. Otherwise,
That's
it's so
exactly.
hard. It's so
Yeah.
hard to grasp that one.
It's so true. I agree. And the thing is, what I also like to tell people is don't do it so that you get a different result with everybody else. Do it because you want to feel better. Because the truth is, it doesn't feel good to feel miserable or sad or angry. It really doesn't. So if you want to stay stuck in that loop, go for it. But if you actually want to have harmony and peace in your life, if you want better things in your life, then what that means is it's going to be important to do the things for yourself that are going to put you in that space because there's only one person in this lifetime. Even if you have kids, there's only one person you can control, and it's yourself. And that's a journey I really had to learn with my sons. It was like, oh, I keep wanting them to change. But the truth is, I've got to accept where they're at and then see how far we can go with this, where they're willing to bend with me and where they're not. It's time for me to acquiesce and chill on that. So, yeah, I agree. So if people are willing to go in for themselves and if the other things align and work out, which some of them absolutely will, and a lot of them will, but don't go in it for that. I'm do this so they change. We're already trying to change them. It's like a level of manipulation, right? It's like, I'm doing this so they do that. And that's not
Right.
always a winning strategy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally, totally. Do you
Yeah.
think that out of the tools that you suggested, do you think that one is more important or more effective than the other?
Um, I'm going to tell you that they all make a difference for sure. The ones that I utilize, I find work for me. And they work for clients too. So they are effective. But like I was saying before, food is a foundational component. So I love to have food in there because people are just going to have an easier time making the changes, well, shifting things once they already feel a little bit better, right? It's like for somebody who um, I was just thinking of like somebody who goes to the doctor and they get a medicine. Without the medicine, it feels like it's harder to get better and their mindset's real heavy. But if they're sometimes if they're given something or they do a little something, gives them enough of an edge to then be able to make other changes they needed to make for things to get much, much better versus just a little bit better. So so the food is there. And then the mindset tool that I was sharing with you guys with honoring your feelings, is a huge one for me personally. And I see it make a great difference in other people because most people allow themselves to loop. Most people allow themselves to feel a level of frustration or annoyance or hurt at someone or something that happened before. And it gets in their way. It gets in their way more than they realize to having a more peaceful family, to having a more peaceful relationship with their partner. It gets in the way of everything. So those two things make a huge difference. And then I also have these are smaller tools, but they really help to regulate your nervous system. So things like if you're feeling angst or upset or whatever, settle yourself, breathe a little bit, come back to, like, as you said, just being a little more present with yourself and do something like tickle your arms. Like I can remember needing to make some important, it sounds funny, but
Yeah.
when you touch your body, if you tickle the inside of your arms for like a couple minutes, first of all, you took your attention off of the issue.
Yep.
Next, you feel a little bit more settled. And third, your nervous system responds to softness, to body touch. And it's your body actually starts to feel safe. It signals safety in the body.
That's
That's why,
amazing.
yeah,
We're
sometimes you do
we're
physical.
gonna go to a quick break. I'm gonna have while we're on this break, everybody needs to try that. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. When we come back, we'll be talking more with Andrea Anderson. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. You can reach me or learn more about me at www.drdianehayden.com. And I'm talking today with Andrea Anderson, and her website is www.andreachapmananderson.com. That's spelled AndreaChapmanAnderson.com. And before we left, we were just talking about just other strategies that we can do as far as like kind of like getting out of the negative self-talk and the feedback loop. And I said, while we're on break, everyone needs to do the last one that you just suggested. And that was basically just like tickling the inside of your arms. And it's amazing, just like doing something small like that, that totally takes you out of,
Yeah.
whatever just heightened, sympathetic nervous system
Yeah.
drive that you're in. So do you have any other cool little things like that?
Yeah. So there's a couple other things that are real basic. And again, the reason we're doing this is because if you just do things to help yourself feel a little bit better, and a lot of times when we bring in mindset tools, that's what's happening, but they don't always stick and it doesn't feel like they always solidify because the body doesn't feel safe. So you actually want to take the time to signal safety to the body that it's safe. And so what you can do is tickling inside the arms, like I mentioned before. Sounds goofy, but I will tell you, as a side note, it does work. I've had calls I've needed to make, like whether it's, I don't know, you're calling somebody about something you're nervous to call them, or there's something that happened with one of your kids or this or that, and you're talking to a teacher and you're like, oh God, oh God. Tickle the inside of your arms because you will feel a little bit lighter. And like we said before, and I said before, you shift your energy and your body starts signal to your brain, I am safe, I am safe, I am safe. So now when we actually feel safe, we feel more solid and we show up differently. We have a greater capacity to speak from a deeper place even because we feel safe. So, so another tool would be if you take your arms, you stretch out your hands and you make your arms straight like this. And you press yourself up against, I will do it up against a refrigerator. And I just will push all my energy into my arms, my hands. Again, you're putting pressure on your body. It's like there's something in you that can feel you, right? It feels that pressure. And your nervous system, again, starts to settle. And then safety is signaled in your body. And again, now when you do things, you're coming from a deeper, more settled place versus an external, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, anxious place. The other thing that's real simple is when you sing or hum to yourself, you're actually also signaling safety to your body and you're settling your nervous system. You're regulating it from where it was before, settling it down. So I can think of one particular situation in my family where there was chaos that broke out, and I had my husband in one situation yelling, and I had a son yelling, and I had a kid crying and kind of yelling, and I started to get involved in the yelling, and I was like, I'm not going to do this. So I caught myself, and which I didn't always do over the years, but I started to get better at that. And I started to hum, and then I started to sing in the middle of all this other chaos going on in my house. I just start singing, and then I start walking away from the mess because first of all, I realized it clicked. I don't want this. This isn't healthy for me or any of us. And I knew I couldn't catch it where it was at in those moments. You can't rein everybody in. You can't control all of them, but you can control you.
Right.
Like, light bulb. Then I started singing. And in those moments, I actually started to make up a song. I don't even know what, I just started singing. And then it allowed me to have the energy because I'm less focused on them. And now I'm determined to feel better. I'm determined for this to be okay. I must walk away from this. And I ended up walking myself out the door onto the front porch. One of my kids comes running out. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm singing to myself to calm down. I don't want to be a part of this. We'll figure this out later. I need space. He's like, oh, okay. And they went back in. And then I just kept singing and singing and singing. By the time I finished that song, and then I went in for a second time to sing this song, I felt so much better. I had shifted my energy. Whatever was going on in the house, I actually didn't need to be a part of because nobody was going to fix that or make that better until everybody else allowed themselves to settle. So I actually was inadvertently at the time teaching other people, do something to step away, do something to step out of this because nobody can hear each other when they're angst, frustrated, or angry. It's not going to happen. We must feel calmer and more peace in order for people to hear each other, for anything to get in to make a shift for any of us. And then I was realizing that I feel more settled after I sing. I walk back in, and by disengaging with everybody else, it also helped them to start to get disengaged more quickly, was the other thing. And I then learned, oh, singing does settle your nervous system. Very cool. So sometimes we find that we do things and not really knowing that they're doing something for our bodies or our brains or our nervous systems, but we're just sort of intuitively drawn to do it, right? And then we go, oh, that's the idea behind that. That's the science behind that. Oh, I get that. So highly, highly, highly recommend this. And you might look like a wackadoo as you walk out singing your song to yourself. It doesn't matter, right? Who really cares? If you get to feel better and then other people get to learn to be wackadoos because it settles them down, like why not? And I'm just joking, right? It's just the idea of do what you need to do to settle yourself, but really importantly, learn for yourself. Keep reminding yourself, nobody's going to hear me if they are upset. I don't care if they're super sad, if they're super angry, or just somewhere in between, they're not going to hear me. And I can't convince them to hear me. And my words are not going to convince them to believe what I believe or want what I want or do what I want them to do. So take a break, settle yourself, give them space to settle themselves, reconvene later. Highly recommend reconvening. If it's an hour later, 3 hours later, the next day, that's okay. But do it and readdress it when everybody is in a more peaceful space. Then you're going to be able to talk and create more room for improvements. Because you're more settled, the other thing is you now open yourself up to possibilities of a higher level of possibilities. When we're upset, it's like we have blinders on. We can't see other options. We can't see other ways that would create forward momentum for ourselves and our family. We're blocked. When we're settled, we can. When we feel even better, we're open to even more potential. When we feel really good, we're open up to even more potential. So the idea is just halt the crap that's happening. And as you halt that, meaning halt yourself and shift your energy, you open up to way more possibility, meaning new situations, people, circumstances will arise to give you new information and possibility for what's next that can help you or your whole family. Make sense?
I love it. Yeah. So how do people typically work with you?
Yeah.
And I know you have obviously people can go to your website, andreachapmananderson.com, but
Yep.
any other places that you want to send people, or if you just want to talk a little bit about how people typically work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, to answer the question about sending people, like where they can go, as you said, they can go to andreachapmananderson.com. And if you add a forward slash and the number 4, simple recipes, what that is a gift that I give to people. And I'll repeat that in a moment. I just want to explain what it is. So anybody who's interested, who feels like they want to learn more about any aspect of what I was talking about, from the food especially to any other components about calming yourself, so you can connect more deeply with your family and have more peace in your family and the works. Basically, I am giving to people they can learn about 2 foods that help you to settle your emotions and feel calm. And along with that are 4 simple recipes that help you to get more of those foods in your body so you can feel calmer. So I think it's a cool gift. I love using food to help myself feel calmer and do the same thing for my family. So if anybody else is interested, again, it's AndreaChapmanAnderson.com /4 simple recipes. And in terms of how I work with people, I typically do private.
Actually, can you read that again? Because I think
Oh yeah,
for I don't know if everybody heard it, but for me, I missed it. Like if you
yeah,
froze
I
for a minute.
absolutely thank you for asking.
Yeah.
So it's AndreaChapmanAnderson.com /4
Yep.
simple recipes, and I can spell it out
Okay.
if that helps.
No,
So
I think that makes sense. Yeah. 4
okay,
simple recipes. Perfect.
okay.
And then
So
how people can work with you.
yeah, so I work one-on-one. I work privately with people. Occasionally I have group programs, but my typical approach is one-on-one. I can help people get in there and get better results often when it's just one-on-one. So and I work with people up to 10 months. That's a very high level program. I have 6 months, which is actually a great length of time where you can start to make little changes slowly that start to impact your relationship with your kids, that start to impact how your kids show up, that starts to impact even your relationship with your partner sometimes, which is really great. And again, it's the things we talked about. I'm helping them get in there and learn what foods to bring in more of, which ones to shift. And it doesn't matter if somebody hasn't, if they're eating foods that they feel a little bit embarrassed that they're eating, who cares? So was I. That's how I ate for years. Like it doesn't matter. We start where you're at and we apply little changes so that you can start to feel better. And the interesting thing, Diane, is that people will go in so that they can help themselves feel better, so that they can help their family and themselves connect better with their kids. But guess what? They end up going, oh my God, my skin is improving. Or, oh my God, I start to lose weight. Like these are cool
Yeah.
bonus effects that we get from like shifting our food and doing some of this other work to settle ourselves, right? So,
Yep.
and that's not the purpose we're going in, but I've always liked those bonuses anyhow. So anyhow, and then I also work with people in shorter stints. There's a 3-month program. If somebody wants to go in and get regular steady support, but doesn't necessarily need to go in and make some quicker changes and watch the results quite as quickly. And then I also do a small 5-week one-on-one program. And that is when there's one specific area somebody wants to get handled, like maybe one particular situation that's happening, and they just want to go in and make some shifts in a shorter period of time, but just real focused in that period of time. So yeah, that's what that looks like.
Yeah,
Questions around that? Yeah.
no, that's awesome. I feel like, I love that you have all these different options as well. So people definitely can pick and choose and, but I would say the majority of families probably need the longer commitment just because it's a lot of new stuff for people. I mean, the food alone might be just a whole new overhaul that they have to make.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. And so, and again, I just want to emphasize for people who aren't ready for an overhaul, we don't go there. I just
Yeah.
help them do what they're willing to do because like if we just start with small steps consistently over time, we're going to see great changes in our situation. We don't have to jump in and I don't have to come in and take everything out of your pantry and put new things in. That's not going to work. No, like there's very few people who would want to go cold turkey like that, right? Like
Yep.
let's keep a bunch of the food in you still like. We're just going to add in a little bit more and have you experiment and see what happens. And then people, as they bring more onto their plate and they notice how good they feel and how how they're showing up with their family, and even they start to see improvements with more harmony in their family, they're like, I want more of this, right? And then they're willing to go even further. And that's what we do.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. I mean, I love everything that you're doing. I think it's so necessary. I mean, you really can help people make such amazing changes in themselves, but also for their family. And just,
Yeah.
think about like how much better it is around everybody when you are more at peace with yourself and then your family and everything. So thank you for all that you're doing. And again, people can learn more about you at www.andreachapmananderson.com. So thank you for being with us. I so appreciate it.
Yeah. Diane, thank you for having me. It's been great. I've had fun talking with you and sharing. And yeah, thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. And I want to thank all of you for tuning into the show. Please join me the first and third Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern and 8 a.m. Pacific. Have a great week, and I'll see you back here next time. Thank you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show, revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Tune in every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com. Center your thoughts on what you want and shut the door on every suggestion of fear, worry, or lack from your own consciousness or the consciousness around you. Once you master that, everything is possible. To learn more about me, Dr. Diane, and receive a free digital subscription of my magazine, visit naturalnutmeg.com.